I'm real pleased to be sitting here with Dr. Robin Hyman, and we're going to have a wonderful conversation about what he does to enhance people's lives and give them healing in a lot of different ways, as well as his affiliation with the incredible Fred Van Liew. So thank you, Dr. Hyman, for being with us today and taking your valuable time. I know you're very busy working with people, and we just appreciate you taking a few
You're
minutes
welcome.
of your time. So I just wanted to start out by letting our viewers know a little bit about what it is that you do and where your area of expertise is as a doctor. If you could share that with us, that'd be great.
Uh, by license, I'm a doctor of chiropractic.
Mhm.
I've combined many different healing modalities into that to what I do now. But it all stems from a personal experience that originally got me into being a chiropractor. For 30 years ago, actually, I was hemorrhaging, and a chiropractor saved my life. About a week later, after his adjustments, just 3 visits, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I remember those days very distinctly. Uh, all the pain was gone, the hemorrhaging, the bleeding was gone. Unfortunately, my back hurt like crazy. Didn't realize the interplay of the nervous system. And a month later, I was able to eat real food, off all the drugs. Actually, off the drugs after his first adjustment because he threw them out in the garbage can. Wouldn't let me take them.
Really?
And about a year and a half later, through his adjustments, the gentle prodding in different directions, I had changed careers, complete change of careers, uh, and went to Davenport, Iowa, to a college called Harmonics College of Chiropractic, where he went to school. He had no choice but either go to his school or get out of his office. And I did, and throughout that whole history of going through school, I kept going back to see this chiropractor who saved my life, good friends. And he would prod me in different directions for different techniques and things to learn that weren't part of the basic curriculum of the school.
Wow. I just can't imagine how when you see you're hemorrhaging and then you have a chiropractor that was able, I mean, how does that work when you're internally bleeding?
Every organ of the human body is innervated by nerves that go through the spine, from the brain back down to the organ, and then from the organ they send messages back to the brain. When something's out of place, in chiropractic we call it a subluxation. Mainly have 3 components to that. There's some misalignment, something's stuck, it's not moving, everything should move properly. And it influences the nervous system, either in a quantitative, the number of nerve signals, or a qualitative, which is kind of like the reception on a rabbit ear's antenna, or your digital TV, or your satellite radio, or your AM radio station. When there's interference, the nerve signals don't send the proper message.
Right.
And then the organs start to react because they get the wrong message, where the organ sends the wrong message back to the brain, and the brain sends yet another message down. It's kind of like in the computer, a garbage in, garbage out type of mechanism. Depending where those vertebral subluxations are, kind of dictated in my case, areas of the intestinal tract for ulcerative colitis.
Wow.
That I suffered for 9 months, taking
Goodness.
tons of drugs, and my employees at the time said, "Go see this chiropractor," and I did. And a week later, and here I am today now in Dallas, Texas.
I can see how you would be inspired to kind of want to pay that forward when you had such a severe situation that was healed in a relatively short period of time based on what you were struggling with all those years.
I saw many people when I went to school. The teacher would ask, "How many people here, raise your hand, were helped by chiropractic in a life-threatening situation?"
Mm-hmm.
And that time, half the class was there because something, they were paralyzed, this or that. And it's changing. The times chiropractic as a profession has grown a lot,
Right.
where it's more accepted. So there's less of those. When I came to Dallas 20 years ago to teach at a college, I asked that same question in my class.
Yes.
And I got maybe out of 200 students, 10 or 15 hands
Right.
went up.
So it wasn't, yeah. I think it is widely more accepted, although I remember how uncomfortable I was with the whole process when I was first exposed to it. But I also wanted to ask you, you have a wonderful affiliation with Fred Van Liew,
Yeah.
and maybe you could just mention how you both met and how that business relationship started.
First met him when I first came to Dallas 20 years ago. Teaching at the college, everything there as a faculty member had to be very apolitical. You weren't allowed to endorse products, and bring that up in your classroom with the students. Even though I still practiced as a field practitioner, I used his products, but so there wasn't a lot of interaction until after I was done teaching. And it was about 6 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago. I ran into him again at a seminar, and at that point, I had some severe stress in my life. I'd have to say, Fred probably saved my life at that point.
Wow.
From what he'd done, interactions that we did. And eventually I just found that what I had done over the 20 years of my practice in the field as a private practitioner, how I've combined all these different techniques into this system that I do, found that his products supported the work that I do, so my patients were able to hold their adjustments for many, many days, weeks, after just one visit, come back in a week or two, as opposed to the multiple 3, 4, 5 times a week that the other doctors are having to do just to keep their patient at the same level.
Oh.
So I found his products worked incredibly, and that's what I had evolved from the doctor who had saved my life 30 years ago, directing me into different techniques to do, to learn that weren't part of the basic curriculum when I went to school, but to learn those more advanced techniques, because ultimately that's when you deal with severe, serious, complex patient cases as a chiropractor, as opposed to a sore back or a neck or a whiplash. I don't think I've ever seen those kind of patients.
So you're dealing with people who are really
cancer,
severely challenged.
Ulcers, bipolar problems. Again, I don't treat any of those diseases specifically.
Right.
I just treat the human spine, the human body, the frame, remove the obstacles to their healing so that the brain can communicate to the organ and the organ can communicate to the brain. And in some cases, the brain is the organ. And that's a lot of your mental, emotional type cases, and combining all these techniques from 192 different chiropractic techniques, Chinese medicine, traditional Thai medicine, Tibetan medicine, Japanese, Chinese acupuncture, Indian Ayurveda, a lot of Aboriginal and shamanic practices from Hawaii, Australia, the Inuits, Alaska, a lot of American Indian healing techniques, Slavic countries, and Russian shamans, and Tibetan bone religions, and all these practices, they all had a similar evolvement, just like chiropractic philosophy. Many of the things in Tibetan Buddhism, for example, are identical to chiropractic philosophy, primordial cause and causation, those aspects.
Well, it's incredible, because I think that you obviously are an expert in all of these different areas and have done the research about the similarities, and yet I think that most people are aware that your emotions and what you're going through, mentally and emotionally does affect your health. I mean, maybe there's a few people that say, no, that's not true. But, I think on average, people recognize that stress, if you just bring up that concept, just the fact that stress will affect you, or if you're going through some kind of emotional trauma. And I wanted to ask you, because I was curious when you were saying that, you said you felt like Fred, what he did by working with you saved your life. And what do you mean? Can you define that?
Very specifically, there was some emotional situations in my life that were extremely intense. Mm-hmm. Most people would just maybe curl up in the corner and die.
Right.
Fred walked into my office with literally a case of Quanta water, 24 bottles of Quanta water, which I think is close to $10 a bottle, and I got $10.
Right.
On his shoulder, like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, threw it on my table and said he wanted me to drink that entire case of Quanta water in 3 days. This was on a Wednesday, and I was to fly to teach for him at a Carl Parker seminar in Las Vegas that weekend. And that was my cellular communication level of adrenals was down in single digits because of the stress. Mm-hmm. So 8 bottles a day of Quanta water for regular water did something majorly drastic. Probably wouldn't be recommended for anyone else.
Right.
And then some of the emotional clear-outs that he's been doing, we do together in seminars now.
Right.
Eliminated a lot of that stress that I've had. So right now I embrace that problem without a bitter problem, actually. And it was a very severe situation.
Well, it's amazing, because your personality, and I didn't know you then, but, just even meeting you just before we started our interview, you seem like joyful and playful, and that you're just, really embracing life in a totally different way. So like, I wouldn't even have imagined that you would have gone through something like that. That's just remarkable.
That's the harmonics of the human body, which
Right.
when they become too low, either due to three basic areas. If you take a look at what I do as a chiropractor in a procedure called body-specific analysis, it's like a three-sided triangle, three equal sides. One side is the structural aspect, which is the traditional chiropractic. The other side is the emotional, mental, energetic involvements that people have. And the other side of the triangle is the chemical, toxin, nutritional. All three of those factors play into everybody's health at any single moment. At that point in my life, the emotional is the major part of it all. And the harmonics of the human body are such that when it becomes very low, products like the EP2 pendant and the Ewater and the NutriBio food and these various forms of protection from electromagnetic stress, as well as the chemical stress, the body's commensal cells in the intestinal tract and throughout the entire body, are some of the most important parts that I've discovered over 20 years of hands-on in the field with patients. And here's Fred Van Liew, a man that's actually got a whole package of products that are addressing that very thing. One less thing I have to do.
Yeah, because of the whole bulldozer pack and incorporates all of those different elements. And I would love to speak to you about that, because I know when I first saw the dot that goes on your phone and the pendant. I mean, I know that even my own mind. I think the difference is that I had already had somebody introduce me to him that I respected, so that that changed my my feeling. And plus, he's so authentic and genuine. But I think that people look at that and they, have some level of skepticism. And maybe you could explain as a doctor, what is it about the pendant or the dot, you know what I mean, that really helps people to avoid, that electromagnetic thing that's going on with the cell phones and everything that's all around us.
That's the thing that's happened now.
I used to run out, sorry to interrupt you, but when I was pregnant, if I was using a microwave, which I know now I should never use a microwave, but when I was using, I would literally run out of the kitchen to make sure that I wasn't being exposed to anything, right, when I was pregnant. But, anyway, so please, if you could.
Electromagnetic interference right now in society, especially in America, a lot of the more developed countries, is beginning to me be one of the biggest scourges that are out there. Years ago, when my profession, chiropractic, started over 100 years ago in 1895, people would fall off the buckboard, fall off the horse. They're out there plowing the fields with a leather strap around their back. They had a lot of physical trauma aspects. Emotional life was a lot simpler back then. Now we have the social, societal problems of the stress factors of the cell phone, the pagers, all the texting, and all the different things that people think are so important in their lives now. But the physical technology behind that, there's more and more research that is now actually very provable. In the Journal of the American Medical Association a couple years ago, did studies with cell phones on both sides of the head and functional MRIs showing the increased cortical activity and glucose metabolism, published in the Journal of the American. Argentine medical doctors did studies where they had people that would wear a cell phone on one hip. The bone actually would have more bone demineralization, like osteoporosis, and they would fracture that hip in a much higher ratio than the other. So the research is coming. I'm sure that in 30 years from now, they will probably see that like the cigarette industry and the tobacco industry was 10 years ago. That's what I liked about Fred's products. He was already on the forefront of that. I have techniques that I use with patients who are very electrically sensitive to get their bodies to adapt quicker, but when they can get supported every day, that way they're not in my office every day. I tell all my patients, my goal is to fix you in one visit. There's always hope. Never comes with a guarantee, though. Caveat there legally. But there's always hope. Would you want to go in the room with a doctor who's got his appointment book open for 20 visits? Or one who's at least got the attitude in the back of his mind, he wants to fix you in one visit and get you out of here so you never have to come back?
Yeah, that certainly is not the norm.
It's the concepts of healing that I integrate, and those work so well with Fred and the products to get that support every day that I do get to space them out. And you can be extremely successful in practice as a doctor with having that attitude. You're not shooting yourself in the foot by telling the patient after the very first visit, come back next time you need me.
Mm-hmm.
That's what my doctor did when he saved my life. I thought he was crazy. 2 days later, I was back because I realized there was such a big difference in what he did. But that gets that healing process started.
Right. Right.
And it just needs a little boost, and I can't be there 24/7 with the patient. What Fred's products are.
Right. Now, like you were saying that with the products that he has, it gives like your patients an opportunity to kind of hold their adjustments longer. Why is that? Like, what are they doing to the body that is achieving that?
That's where the interference that people have free will. I can clear out an emotional situation relative to a really bad car accident that they had, and all the emotional resentment about the person that ruined their nice brand new Lexus, and all these things. But they can go home and continue to think about it and create new problems.
Yeah.
The products help to take the edge off that electrical activity in the brain, which we can discharge through some of these adjustments. A lot of that research has been done at UCLA with EEG studies, pre and post adjustments.
Mm-hmm.
But that helps to the patients and not, it's like a cocoon around them. It's almost as if when I give my patients my cell phone number, they all have my cell phone number. In case they really need, because I also see patients that are suicidal and they can call me anytime, wherever. Not that I'm treating psychological suicidal tendencies, but I'm there as a full doctor for them. But that aspect of the patient, very rarely do I ever get a phone call from a patient.
You were talking about that. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you were talking about people who are suicidal, and I have a really good friend of mine who was diagnosed with being bipolar and was taking the traditional drugs and whatever the case may be. And I'm not aware of whether this person's ever tried using chiropractic, but what happens in the body, like if you're doing work on people that helps them with that aspect, is that's different than just being depressed.
Mm-hmm.
Correct?
That's again back to what we call the triad of health. There are structural misalignments in the spine that have been done. Dr. B.J. Palmer developed it, Pharmacology Chiropractic, for which it's named,
Mm-hmm.
had two sanitariums, one Clearview Sanitarium. And all he dealt with was the C1 and C2, the first two vertebrae of the neck.
Now, are people born this way, or is it this happens?
That's back. They either have a structural problem,
mm-hmm.
maybe they've had a lot of emotional trauma that has created an electrical charge in the hippocampal region of the brain, part of the limbic system, measurable in a 12-lead EEG study. They think of a problem in their past,
mm-hmm.
and the LED leads are spiking all over.
Right.
They can put a hand on certain reflex points and think of that same situation, and it's a flat line. The charge electrical activity is deadened, softened. We do corrections, whatever we do, based on what the problem is.
Right.
Now just think of the problem in the clear without touching the reflex point, and the EEG is normal.
Wow.
So that would be the electrical side. It could be chemical imbalances of certain nutrients that the body is lacking, or nutrients that they've been taking that are artificial synthetic vitamins, and drugs possibly that may be causing some of that electrical activity, which is neurological in origin by way of the nervous system. So anybody with any condition, from mental and psychological disorders, gastrointestinal, cardiovascular, hormonal, endocrine, fertility issues, all these things, all those functions of the human body travel by way of the nervous system.
Well, I know that I met one of Fred's clients that you may or may not have worked with. I'm not really sure, but I know that was one of the things that was so touching to me is that he was suicidal, and he said as a result of using the pendant, going through the bulldozer pack, and all of that he really had his life back. And again, like you said, felt that his life was saved. And maybe we could just talk a little bit about Fred. Obviously he's got these great products, and I know as from a professional standpoint, with you as an expert, you talk about the value of the products and what they do for the body and whatnot. But maybe you could also talk about him just personally, because I think people have a very strong reaction to him personally, because you do feel the authentic desire that he has to heal people. And can you just kind of describe for people who don't know him, who he is at the core, as somebody who is really committed to healing?
I've seen in all dealings with Fred, his ultimate goal has always been to get that patient to live better, happier life, less symptoms of whatever, if there's a known disease or whatever. If there is no diseases or sicknesses, just to be more prosperous and successful in life. It's kind of always been his life work. He just found different ways with products and things to interest in that. Even to his spiritual background in Christianity and things. I was raised Catholic. There's a lot of people who've looked at different religious backgrounds, and I've studied many different religions. Probably the most that I've learned in the Christian realm, a true understanding of what that truth is all about, is really from Fred.
Wow.
It's kind of like a generic aspect.
Yeah.
I've literally studied a lot of Tibetan Buddhism, a lot of oaths and vows I've taken, and there's no dichotomy, no conflict in this. What I've learned in Catholic school, what Fred's taught me in Christianity, what I've learned in all these other religions, there is a commonality to it all. I've never seen anyone so passionate that can explain it so specifically, so simply. In seminars that we have, there's different topics that will come up out of free will, and we just let the course go where it goes in those respects. And there'll be people who are of the Muslim faith, people who are Sufi, people that are Buddhist, people of all different religions. And if they really just listen to what he has to say about that aspect, you get another part of healing. Because healing occurs either on the physical level, on the emotional level, or on the spiritual level. And that's part of what I do, and that's what I like with Fred, is he encompasses all three of those levels.
Right.
Very few people do that. It takes a person who truly understands healing, no matter what profession you call it, allopathy, homeopathy, naturopathy, chiropractic, whatever. It's healing on all those levels. It doesn't say that one level is more important to the other. They all are. The important part is where is the obstacle, the roadblock, the boulder. Hence where you got the name of the boulders.
Yeah. It's a wonderful name for it. And I appreciate you saying that, because I think that I was going to ask you what you enjoy about the time that you work together, and I think you really pretty much answered that, unless you have something else you'd like to add.
Working with Fred in the seminars, I mean, it's a lot of people have thought of us as Felix and Oscar, the odd couple, but it works, meshes very well together.
Right.
Because what I don't bring into the area, he brings in. What he doesn't bring in, I bring in. And in working with these seminars and the products, we each know almost what the other person's going to say before we say it. And that's how everything works. And then the people understood how that happens between us, the dynamics of how we work. Right. They may be able to realize how they can work with other people. And again, teaching them again how to be successful.
Exactly. It's wonderful. And I also wanted to ask, just because I think it'd be kind of fun. So we're talking about the business relationship. So, but you also have a pretty strong friendship with him too. And maybe you could just talk about just your friendship and how that's developed over the years as two amazing gentlemen who also like to have fun.
Well, he's been there for me many times.
Yeah.
At times when you wouldn't understand, other people could just pick up a phone call on a deadline of a couple of hours of needing to return a truck. And he drops everything and sits there and helps to carry about 12,000 pounds of steel library shelving. Little things that he's always there. Yeah. There's not sure what I can say.
No, but I think what's neat about it, you don't have to say anything. I'll tell you why. I can see it in your eyes, and I can feel it from you. And I think I feel that way too. I think that the people that I know who know Fred feel incredibly grateful, because he's an amazing friend and a very giving and loyal, committed person to have in your life. And that's whether you are one of his clients or his customers or one of his students or a business associate. And it kind of runs I that's the experience that I have in meeting with people like yourself and doing this, and for people to get to know who he is. And
getting to know Fred, you see him sometimes as a very hard, strong, some people might say caustic businessman or whatever, but bottom line in business is making a profit. If you don't make any profit, you can't pay the bills.
Right.
But at the same point, I've seen Fred's charitable side that most people have never seen. And that's where he just opens up his heart, his pocketbook sometimes. And I've seen examples, not to give details, but just, and doesn't even want to take credit for it until someone hears about it or something. And that's what I've seen him with me.
Well, I've watched him spend, a tremendous amount of time with people, asking nothing in return, counseling them on the phone. And it's not just about the products. It's just about,
All sorts of
the
things.
struggles they're going through. So that's wonderful. Well, I also wanted, before we finish the interview to ask you, I mean, I think a lot of times, people look at your profession, the profession, what he does, and there's some skepticism. People who, were raised in a traditional situation, or by people that didn't, really look for preventative, methods or, just what you've learned about chiropractic, which is scientific, but people still think it's not. Maybe you could just talk to the person right now who's watching us and listening to us, but like a little bit skeptical about trying some of the different products that he has. What would you say to that person?
When a person looks at the products, look at what you've been spending for the last 6 months of your life, the last year of your life, and how's that been working for you? How much money have you spent on all this other stuff?
Right.
Money aside, what results have you got? Here, give it a month or two. Look at how do you, when the person says, well, I don't know if this will work or not. I'm not sure I believe in this. People always ask me this question about belief. When you study certain realms of intelligence gathering, they look at how does a person understand truth. That's where it boils down to when you buy something, a product, or you think you're going to invest in a whole new career change. How do you know what is true is true? There's basically 17 different biases that people base what they think is true to be true. And these are available in various books and that, but those biases is what is determining how well the person is going to trust that product. The neat thing about trust a product and believing is you shouldn't believe in it. I don't believe in anything. I get accused sometimes because I say I don't believe in God. I don't believe in chiropractic. I don't believe in body-specific analysis. I know it to work. Right? B.J. Palmer, I learned this actually from his writings. At the time he was trying to be inducted into the Masons, and they asked him, B.J., do you believe in God? And he said, no. And he did it really for publicity because he got blackballed for over a week in the newspapers and everything. Right. And he said, well, if they would just ask me, I would have said, I don't believe in God. I know God. But how do you get to the point of knowing? Deepak Chopra and another gentleman wrote a book, Super Brain, I believe is the title of the book that is, where they talk about this concept of knowing. They kind of condensed it down into faith, belief, and then finally to know. If you truly know something, how do you get to that result? Sometimes you take a little bit of a leap of faith and you try something, so to speak. Like some people, I might try chiropractic. When a patient tells me that, I say, keep your money, stay home, die early. At some point, you're going to take that step and go beyond that trying and just do it. Just plain do it. And when you get to see the results, you'll see. I haven't seen many things that get that calm, gentle result. You won't get an immediate overnight result like you would with a chemical drug. Chemical drugs work that way. They're tricking the body. When you heal naturally, it's going to be a gentle, more profound, everything seems more coherent. And that's all the harmonics of how the body heals.
Right. And I think that a great thing for people to do as well in listening to you is to, navigate, the different interviews that are available for people to watch about the people that you both worked with individually and collectively that you've worked with together to just see the results that have been created, like I say, by each one of your areas of expertise and your passion and commitment for serving people. So I want to thank you very much for spending this time. It's really been a pleasure. And I just think you're an incredible gift to people, that you dedicated your life to this process. So thanks again, Dr. Hyman.